So it is a well-known fact that in the field of classical music, a lot of classically trained players are terrified of improvisation. It's not that scary though, it's actually very easy. Improvising is super easy. Now, improvising well, that's a little bit harder, but improvising is easy. But remember, just like when you learn to play at all, you're gonna be bad at it before you get good. So just be patient with yourself. It's gonna take a while to get this right. One of the things we hear a lot is which scale should I be playing over which chord? It's important to know which chord you're playing over. When you're doing classical music, you don't have to think about that. The composer already worked it all out. He knows or she knows which chord they wrote and which scale they're having you play over that chord. As an improviser, improvisation is just composition in real time. So you have to know what chord is being played and which scale you're playing over it. So playing a G major scale over a G major chord would make sense, right? But what does that actually mean? Surely you don't mean we're just going to play the scale. Actually, it can. It can mean that you just play the scale. I like to think in 2-octave scales for reasons that will be apparent in Improv 201, but let's just hear a G major 2-octave scale over a G major chord. Not terribly imaginative, but it works. What if we take a couple of notes out of that scale? Now that's a little weird and choppy, but it also works. We don't have any no-no notes in there, right? That's what we're trying to avoid. What if we fill those gaps by making some of the notes longer? And we can change up the rhythms to make it a little less monotonous, like this. Now that's a little bit better. Now the notes are still in the same order, so it still feels a little scale-y. So what if we reverse the order of some of those notes like this? Now that's not Coltrane, but it is improv, and you can see how we came up with that. It's really pretty simple. We basically took more or less a G scale, turned around a couple of the notes, maybe changed up a rhythm or two, and there we are. That's all it means to play a scale over a chord. We just use these notes, not necessarily in that order, and change up the rhythms. That scale, by the way, once we took those 2 notes out, is the pentatonic scale, which is the building block for blues and rock and jazz improvisation. So here is a major scale, and here is a pentatonic scale. Now, Matt, you say there are more than one pentatonic scale. Yes, there are. There are a bunch. But the 2 ones we use the most are the major pentatonic scale and the minor pentatonic scale. Now keep in mind the G minor pentatonic scale is the same scale as the B flat major pentatonic scale, or you could think in terms of G Dorian minus the 2nd and 6th scale degree. There's a lot of different ways to think about this. This is one of the cool things about music theory. However you want to think about it, however makes it easier for you, that's what you should do. So now let's play something in G minor pentatonic over G major. Yes, that's still going to work. And let's start with just the 2-octave scale. Now again, let's change up the rhythm for some more variety and musicality. And again, let's change the order of the notes a little bit. Nothing too crazy. We're just going to reverse a couple of the minor lines there. So that's literally all there is to it. We get really intimidated sometimes. If you know your scales, you can improvise over a chord. So this is very, very basic, very introductory Improv 101 over a static chord. The chord never changes. There's no rhythm. You don't have to worry about where the beat is. We just have to get comfortable coming up with lines kind of out of nowhere, except they're not out of nowhere. They're from the scales that we practice over and over and over as we're growing up. Now, as you know, most music is not rhythmless. It does not sit on one chord. There's just not this sort of cloudy G chord that you're going to sit over. Improv 201 is going to be learning how to get from a G chord to a C chord or a D chord or an E minor chord. How do we get from one chord to another and switch scales as we're doing that, or do we even have to switch scales? But for now, this is an intro. Don't concern yourself about any of those things. Just get comfortable playing notes that are not on a page in front of you. Practice over a drone. You can find a bunch of these things on YouTube. And then maybe start moving to a backing track with some rhythm. Still does not change chords. Just kind of get yourself comfortable with doing this. I would suggest taking maybe 30 minutes of your practice time for the next week or two. Practice over some drones in different keys. You don't want to get really good at one key and then not be able to play the other ones, right? And then maybe move to a backing track with some rhythm that's still just sitting on that one chord. And once you've gotten comfortable with that, then we'll talk about going from one chord to the next.